The legends of the East say that Solomon, son of the great prophet David, was the ruler of the world 2700 years before Christ. He ruled over land and sea. Solomon defeats Buzas, king of Saida, who would not yield to him, and takes his daughter Alina as his wife. Alina is a very unhappy woman. She would not stop crying day in, day out. When asked by Solomon what her pleasure is, Alina replies that her desire is to have a palace in the most beautiful place on earth where she would like to spend the rest of her life. Whereupon, word is sent to all the travelers. However, Alina is not pleased with any of the locations suggested to her. Finally, a Phoenician sailor mentions a peninsula situated just where the Golden Horn meets the Bosphorus. No sooner Alina goes ashore at Sarayburnu, her endless sorrow instantly turns into joy, for this indeed is the most beautiful place on earth. Solomon has a palace built there, at the very spot, and then opening his hands to the sky, he prays that this place may exist through eternity, so that all human beings should see and admire it in order to understand God's power and greatness. The desire of mankind to see and to know is forever improving. This is taste, this is joy, this is selfishness, and above all, it is the will to possess. The ones who were powerful were always obsessed with the desire to own this glorious city. So they came to the gates of the city with their armies. King Mithridates of Pontus, Alcibiades of Athens, Lysander of Sparta, King Darius of Persia, Alexander of Macedonia, and many others. The strong Byzantine walls protected Istanbul from the gaze of its admirers for years and years, as though it was a precious jewel. The great Ottoman Emperor, Sultan Muhammad the Conqueror, built the castle of Rumeli when he was only 21 years old, the object of which was, in cooperation with the older castle on the Asiatic side, built by Bayezid the Thunderbolt, to cut the city off from communication with and the possible aid from the Black Sea. Hence, an attack on Byzantium would be successful without any outside help. Evliya Çelebi states that the plan of the castle, which was built in as short a time as 3 months, represents the name Muhammad. Although there were many attempts to seize the city throughout the centuries before the conqueror, none of the Eastern or Western emperors and their armies were able to enter this city. Let us now wander around in the city to our heart's desire. Here is the famous Saint Sophia, which was built 4 different times in the past. The first Saint Sophia was built during the reign of Constantine the Great to pay tribute to Saint Sophia, goddess of wisdom. Then came Constantine II and second Saint Sophia. Then Theodosius II and third Saint Sophia. And finally the fourth Saint Sophia, which Emperor Justinian set out to build after it was burnt down during the Nika revolt. The present edifice is essentially that of Justinian's reign. The fourth Saint Sophia, which was the largest building of its time, is supported by 4 elephants' feet. It is adorned by frescoes and mosaics of Christ, Virgin Mary, Constantine, and the saints. After the conquest, Muhammad the Conqueror converted this church into a mosque and opened it for the prayer of the Muslims, saying that the house of God is one. Dikili Taş. The obelisk is one of the best known and most interesting sites of the Sultanahmet Square. It was brought from Egypt during the reign of Emperor Theodosius between the years of 379 and 395 after Christ. The hieroglyphics on the four different sides depict the 30 years of the pharaoh Thutmose III. This square is located on the site of the ancient hippodrome where the ruthless Byzantine gladiators rode their chariots. There was a lot of violence and blood. Here, one can almost feel the clamor of centuries long past. The Sultanahmet Mosque, a striking example of classical Turkish Ottoman art, was built in 1617 upon the order of Sultanahmet I. This mosque, which fascinates the viewers with its 6 thin minarets, is unique in that it is the only mosque originally built with 6 minarets. Owing to the dominant blue color of the paint, the magnificent stained glass windows, and blue ceramic tiles used generously to decorate its interior, the mosque is known as the Blue Mosque throughout the world. As we continue our walk, we see the famous Fountain of Sultanahmet on our way, which is a beautiful piece of art built with such great taste and elegance that the likes of which one cannot behold anywhere else. The road leads us to a big gate. Beyond this gate is the Topkapı Palace, which was built after Sultan Muhammad conquered Istanbul. The ways of the mind are one and the same. 4,000 years after Solomon, like Alina, the Sultan chose the same site to construct his palace. He could not have chosen a more magnificent site in the city, for this is where the Sea of Marmara and the Bosphorus caress the shores of Sarayburnu. The structure reflects the simplicity and unimposing taste of Ottoman architecture. The visitor who comes here today needs to work his imagination exhaustively to visualize and understand the glory behind the unimposing simplicity of the architecture while admiring the invaluable jewels. What is seen here today is only a small fragment of the splendor and riches that was lived here in the past. Every stone of the Topkapı Palace displays a workmanship of utmost quality. The palace overlooks the Golden Horn at its north end. This inlet, called the Golden Horn by the Westerners, is adorned with 3 bridges which seem like necklaces from afar. Today, the Galata Bridge took the place of the heavy chain, which was placed there by Constantine to prevent the ships from entering the Golden Horn during the siege of the city by Mohammed the Conqueror. The Galata Bridge, which is one of the 3 bridges on the Golden Horn, is a floating bridge that dates back to 200 years ago. And it is still floating regardless of the heavy load it carries. This is the Galata Tower, the last remnant of the medieval Genoese, was built in 1341. It still whispers the secrets of Emperor Zeno. This tower, 140 meters high, stands erect as if challenging the years. It has a bird's eye view of the fair Istanbul, the Bosphorus, the Sea of Marmara, and ancient Byzantium. It has become a symbol of this side of the Golden Horn. But what about the other side? There, we see the new mosque with its fine minarets piercing into the sky, the mosques of Beyazıt, Fatih, and Suleiman, built between 1550-1567. It is a fitting monument to its founder, Suleiman the Magnificent, and the masterwork of the greatest of Ottoman architects, the incomparable Sinan. The mosque, with its complexes, is a peerless building that represents all the characteristics of the Turkish architecture at its peak. It has 4 great minarets. The 2 minarets in the front have 2 balconies, while the 2 in the back have 3, adding up to 10 altogether. These 10 balconies represent the fact that Suleiman was the 10th emperor of the imperial line of Ottoman. Istanbul, which served as the capital of a vast and powerful empire that lasted for 600 years and ruled over 3 continents, evidently homes many palaces. The empire was destroyed, but the palaces defied time and lived through the centuries. Dolmabahce was the last palace to be built, and therefore the best one in shape. Dolmabahce was the last palace to be built and therefore the best one in shape. The palace built in 1850s during the reign of Sultan Abdülmecid is a mixture of Ottoman and Gothic styles of art. Leander's Tower, or Maiden's Tower as is commonly known by the Turks, resists against the waves of the Bosphorus and maintains the memory of a young girl. As the legend goes, a princess was confined to this tower built in the middle of the sea by her father, Constantinus II, Byzantine king, to protect her from the fate foretold by a dire prophecy that she would die from the bite of a serpent. Alas, one day the prophecy came true, and the Princess Hera was eventually bitten by the serpent sent to the tower in a basket of figs as a gift. From that day on, the Maiden's Tower stands sadly alone in the Bosphorus, which opens into the Sea of Marmara. Today, Istanbul is a big city astride 2 continents, Asia and Europe. Let us take a boat trip along the Bosphorus and discover this 3,000-year-old city, which now has a population of over 7 million. Let us see the modern buildings and colorful yellows along the Asiatic coast of the Bosphorus, which is about 40 kilometers long.
You know I love you, you know we love you. Sunsets of red and gold light up the mosques of old.
These houses reflect the splendor of the years long gone into the cool waters of the Bosphorus. In spite of the fact that Marmara and all the other closed seas are polluted due to reckless activities of mankind, the water of the Bosphorus remains crystal clear thanks to the currents, for the water is constantly washed by these currents every day, every minute. So Solomon's prayer was answered. Although mankind tries very hardly to the contrary, nothing could pollute or destroy the beauty of the Bosphorus. So the people of Istanbul enjoy swimming in these shores all summer long.
Is on your mind. Merhaba, merhaba, merhaba dünya. Merhaba, merhaba, merhaba dünya.
No other people of any other city in the world are as lucky as the inhabitants of Istanbul. A New Yorker, a Parisian, or a person from Bonn cannot have the pleasure of living in the bosom of nature or hug the cool waters of the sea. Perhaps it's a privilege to be born in Istanbul, who knows?
Merhaba, merhaba, merhaba dünya. Merhaba, merhaba, merhaba dünya. İstanbul, İstanbul. You know I love you, you know we love you. Sunsets of red and gold light up the mosques of gold. The Bosphorus calls you to share the magic view. Merhaba, merhaba, merhaba dünya. Merhaba, merhaba, merhaba dünya. Merhaba, merhaba, merhaba dünya. Merhaba dünya. Merhaba, merhaba, merhaba dünya. Merhaba, merhaba, merhaba dünya. İstanbul, İstanbul. You know I love you, you know we love you.
With its rich historical background, Istanbul is the center of tourism. This exceptionally located city, surrounded by two seas, is trying its best to welcome visitors from abroad. With beautiful hotels, way above the world standards, and its touristic complexes, Istanbul can entertain tourists of different backgrounds from all over the world. Along with the matchless Turkish hospitality, you will also get to know the handicrafts of the people and admire their fine taste. Here is the covered bazaar in Istanbul, which is the oldest and largest covered marketplace in the world. This has been the meeting place of all the tourists for 300 years. Here is gold and jewel sales on such a large scale as you will never witness anywhere else in the world. The Turkish jewels, which have filled the sweet dreams of all the ladies since Alina, blind your eyes, don't they? The porcelain plates hanging on the walls are exceptional examples of Turkish art style. The handmade copies of the tiles that adorn Ottoman palaces can be found here, along with copper kettles and samovars. These handmade objects will live as remnants of Eastern legends. We are in a typical Turkish house, decorated with carpets and kilims. Is it easy to place this modern-looking lady into this place? These are the things that exist or the things that we want to exist. On the other hand, there are such tastes in the 3,000-year history of Istanbul that we'll never be able to experience. Judging from what we hear from our grandparents, we know that the Golden Horn was the place for outings. Well, these are the echoes of 100 years ago. Istanbul is a little different today. However, the people of Istanbul remain the same. In the early hours of the morning, when the sun begins to rise in the sky, a lovely tune covers the horizon of Istanbul. And gradually neon lights are lit one after the other, and an oriental dance starts at night. Istanbul is exalted, and the fun continues until the wee hours of the morning. Istanbul, a legendary city, a cradle of history, a haven for tourists, an important stop on the Silk Road and Spice Road. Istanbul, a passage, a big bridge between Asia and Europe.